right, so I'll call the meeting to order right at 7 o'clock. Beautiful summer day.
Better day for a meeting.
Yeah. Additions, deletions, changes to the agenda as published.
None here.
I don't think there are any. And public comment, Peter?
Well, I'm not sure this is public comment. On the front porch forum, maybe a week ago or so, I noticed that the solid waste district has eliminated the metal recycling bin
Okay.
in their new plan, and I just think that's a tremendous loss. Burnett's is really not interested. They sort of cavalierly said, take your toaster to Burnett's and throw it in, and they're a real big commercial place. You don't drive in that place easily
Right.
without knowing it and get rid of that. And
Yeah.
I don't know whether the select board is interested in just requesting that they put the bin back, but I think really
Okay.
it would be great.
I hadn't heard that, so I guess I didn't see that on Front Porch Forum.
I noticed that, and I assumed that that was fine, so thank you for pointing out that it isn't.
So they won't have we had a metal dumpster that,
Yep.
a place, and there is one in Williston when I go there,
Yep.
which is convenient. So now they're saying in their plans, they don't have one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay. I think,
And did they give a reason why, or that's for us to find out?
Well, they sort of said it was, I'm not sure, but it almost seemed like, oh geez, we're redundant, you've got Burnett's here, so why do we need this one?
My mind goes to wondering if that's part of their redesign to, they don't have enough space, they're thinking, so they're looking for things to eliminate, and that's how they justified it. I don't know.
I think you're right, Aaron.
I'm just kind of speaking off the top of my head.
Yeah. What I would be willing to do is to email
Sarah.
Clifford's,
Gardner.
yeah, Lynn
Lynn.
Gardner, and ask, is there anything we can do? And even if it's not a full, you're right, maybe a full dumpster would take a long time to fill with just people bringing it from home. But, a few fence posts or whatever you bring would be convenient, so that would be nice. And Barrett's is difficult. I mean, it's an industrial sort of drop off. Yeah. Yeah.
When I called, I think it was Myers, one of the collection people, because I realized they don't have metal recycling. If you pay, you obviously have to have figured that out some other way. And they said, oh, we tell everybody to bring it to the local solid waste district.
Okay.
Anyway,
So I'll
that's
ask
all. I
these.
didn't take any,
Okay.
I wouldn't take any more time. I'm gonna make a few more phone calls and see.
All right.
whether I
Yeah.
get anything, but-
All right. And I'll at least contact Lynn and ask him, and see where we go from there. And
Thank you.
all right. That sounds good. Thank you. And I take it no other public comment. Next item on the agenda is to consider Lyman Park condo request for funds for culvert replacement. So they're asking us to purchase the culverts, 2 of them, that are on town land. We talked about it. They had very good engineering plans, and the culverts are a very small part of what they're planning to do to improve stormwater around one of their main buildings. And considering that it's on town land, they asked if the town would do it. I think the select board seemed amenable to the idea, but we said, geez, let's get our road commissioner on this. So I did speak with Mike Anthony. He took a look at it. He didn't have a problem with it. He said it's up to the select board. He said that the culverts would cost somewhere between $200 and $400. He would need to order them. And he was willing to do that, leaving it up to the select board. I asked if he wanted to supervise the installation. He said only if time allowed. He wasn't too worried about it. But I would suggest if we do this, we would have the engineer at least notify him when they're doing this work. I don't know if anybody's contacted the school on this. That was a recommendation from us.
Yes, yeah.
So that's where that stands.
So I spoke to Andrea just before the meeting, and she also thought it was fine that the town paid for it, but she had some additional requests that the path be more accessible. There's a walking path that was on the map that we spoke about last time, and that the parking lot is large there. It's meant to be for people to be able to park in who are playing in the ball field there, in the Lyman Park ball field. And they have some kind of a sign there that I don't remember what it says, but I know I've seen it. It seems like it's private parking, but that sign should be taken down. That was her recommendation. So that's just additional things. I thought maybe they'd be here, but I know one of them was going to be on vacation.
They had actually emailed and said, do we need to be there? And I said, I don't know what the select board's going to do, but yeah, you didn't necessarily have to be here.
Okay.
So those sound like additional things sort of outside of this scope.
Exactly, they are.
And that could be something the zone administrator looks at.
Yeah, good point.
And she also reiterated what Tom said, to pay attention to the drainage between the ball field and that culvert.
Yeah.
It's a little tricky there, apparently.
And I'm happy to, depending on what we do here, if we go ahead and do it, I'm happy to copy Renee, but email them saying, what our decision is. But, we do want you to at least touch base with the school district to make sure that the access way and everything is, and that they're okay with the plan moving forward.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're just replacing what was there, but still,
Yeah.
there may be some conflicts there.
So I'll make a motion to approve the purchase by the town for the culverts for the Lyman Park Condo Association repairs or upgrades, contingent upon the recommendations of the select board at their July 11th meeting.
Oh, so. what
At
do you
our
mean?
July 11th meeting.
Yeah, the recommendations would be to.
Contact the school, contact
Okay.
all the persons involved.
Yeah,
I don't think it was unreasonable at all.
Yeah.
yeah,
I second it.
okay. Yeah, it seems reasonable to provide the culverts for town land. And, it's a lot of people live there and they've got some problems, so this will, and they've gone through an engineering firm that seems like it's well thought out. So
Then we don't have to address it again as long as
Yeah.
they.
Yeah,
Yeah, my only concern was what I voiced at the last meeting, and that is making sure Mike Anthony had a look-see.
yeah,
He did. He's happy. We're good.
yeah. All
I
right,
guess that all it leaves is the school district, just to make sure that they know what's going on.
right. So, like I said, I'll email them about that, the requirement, and I'll copy Renee on it.
Thank you.
Okay, so,
Do we need to vote?
Yeah.
Yep.
all right, yeah, so all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye, so that motion passed. Let me just write this down. Oops, sorry if my thing keeps...
I did watch the meeting from the 11th, so I'm up to speed.
Oh, okay. All right, next item on the agenda is one from last meeting too. Consider approving the town road and bridge standards. These were some, I'll say, improvements from the state. We do this every year, although it looked a little more complicated this year. I spoke to Mike Anthony, who was unable to make tonight's meeting, but he said he had no concerns about the changes, that to go ahead and approve those, and that they are, our town, with his lead, I assume, is working on our standards to match the latest state standards.
Great.
So again, this is something we do every year. I think it's required for us to get road money, so they've got us over a barrel maybe, but it seems reasonable.
So I'll make a motion to approve the town road and bridge standards.
Here,
as
I'm
presented.
going to give the wording here because it is something we have to sign.
Yeah.
So it would be a motion that the town of Hinesburg adopts the town and road bridge standards that apply to construction, repair, and maintenance of town roads and bridges. The standard is dated June 5th, 2019.
So moved.
Okay?
Second it.
All right. So I have it here, and I think I'll end up only the Board of Commissioners chair. I guess that's me. Nope. We all have to sign it. So that'll
we're
be
all
something, if we pass that, then we'll all have to sign that. All right, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. So that passed. And now it's up to me to get everyone to sign that. You'll come up when we tell you to come up. Eric, you can come on up. All right. Agenda item 5, approve annual allocation pool. It's interesting that it's called pool designation. This is annual. These are the Appendix E's in our ordinances, water and wastewater, and they describe how we will allocate into different categories and how much we have available to allocate each year. It is up to the select board to designate this with the recommendation from our, Eric is our, what's your official?
Utilities director.
Director of Utilities, Water and Wastewater. But it's possible in the middle of the year we could choose to move things around in categories if we need to, but this helps the zoning administrator and our town planner and those looking for development to see what's available and in which categories we would allocate them. So last time we looked at some drafts and there was some discussion on the water. And I think Eric used for capacity based on a 12-hour pumping. We wondered why we changed, and we had some discussions with Cindy Sprague.
Absolutely.
I think Cindy left it to me in saying it's not really 12 hours versus 15. It's what the capacity of the well is, and you can use those as guidelines, I guess.
Right.
Do you want to talk about maybe your discussion with her and what you've decided, because you've made some changes?
Sure. So
So I'll pull that up here.
Yep.
That's
last year we'd had a 15-hour pumping rate because it was well within our permitted capacity that the state laid out for us. But discussing with the hydrogeologist, but it was a discussion. She didn't have all the numbers, all the history and stuff during that discussion. She cautioned against going over the 12 hours. Didn't, just with that amount of information, she didn't think it was a good idea. So I rolled back to 12 hours and brought forward what you saw last week. Went back to Cindy with my permit, with our historical numbers, what we've done. I mean, heck, what we were able to do during the big leak when we were pushing, we were leaking more than we were using. And she said, "Oh, yeah, you what you're doing is actually, cautious level. You're good." So she looking at the actual, data, she yielded basically and changed her mind and said that my original determination was actually more, much more cautious than the state level, and was quite prudent. So I went back to it.
So I would like a little bit more information, because my understanding last time was that 12 hours a day is best practices for the aquifer, to keep the aquifer sustainable into the future. And that was why she recommended that, and that the state used to have that as their requirement, but then for some reason the I don't understand and wasn't able to find out, they've just dropped all limitations. Let the municipalities decide.
I guess what they did is they changed the formatting. They've got so instead of doing it, they gave the town more flexibility. Instead of doing an hours, they did a total yield.
Okay.
So whether it be 12 hours, 24 hours, if it's 12 hours at this much or 24 hours at this much, it's the same.
Okay, that's very helpful.
So
So they're looking not
so
at the hours of pumping, but at the yield,
the
amount of
total
water.
daily yield.
Yeah, that makes a lot more
And
sense.
so this is well within the total daily yield, and the hours aren't that important.
Okay, thank you, Eric. That
Yeah.
makes a lot more sense to me.
Yep.
And so I think you put together the new chart.
So new recommendations, well, the data and then the recommendations.
And then the recommendations, yes. And Alex had some input on the categories.
Right.
And so maybe we'll just go down through it, just because
Sure.
there were a couple of questions, not concerns, but just questions.
Absolutely.
So we did change the water capacity from 235 gallons on that first line per minute to 215.
Right.
And what was the...
If you look back to last year, it was 215. That's our comfortable gallon per day yield.
Okay.
With the changing from the 15 hours to the 12 and realizing the bind it was putting us in, I said, okay, what can I do pushed? Putting in more chemicals, pushing the cartridges so they basically have half the life they do currently, and came up with the 235
To kind of force it, yeah.
in order to try to, soften the blow of that loss of capacity. Well, we gained it back, so I returned back to
More conservative approach.
The more efficient stuff that will cost a lot less to do.
Okay. So that explains why that changed.
This is appendix E.
So the water capacity
This
in gallons a day is 215 gallons a minute times 900 minutes in a day, or is that, 900 minutes?
Right.
Yeah.
Pump time?
Right.
Pump
Never
time.
mind, it's pump
15
time.
hours.
Up
If you
to
calculate
that.
15 hours.
Yep.
Right. So how does that stack up against the gallons per day that the pump is permitted for?
The permit is more generous than I believe the aquifer will sustain. So that is more conservative than the permit.
Right.
Yeah.
And what is the number that
The permit is 306,000 gallons,
Wow.
which I don't know what the state
Is
was
that
thinking.
total, or is that what's permitted?
That's the and that's the thing, that the 306 is gross. This is what I'm showing is net. That's
So this is
after
after microfiltration.
after microfiltration, after the loss through the microfiltration.
Yeah.
So the 306 would actually be, if I was using like numbers, would be high, like 260 or so. Probably like that.
And
But,
would we be able to process that amount through the microfiltration? It's maybe too
If
small.
we ran it 24 hours a day, but
Yeah.
Cindy and I both agree that we don't think the aquifer
Yeah.
would like it.
So this capacity is less than what it's permitted for.
Correct. Yep.
And I think Cindy's description to me was, this is really a site-by-site calculation. And
Absolutely.
that the people who run it understand how it runs. Like you say, because we run through microfiltration, well, that impacts how fast you can pump out of the well, and how not only do you have to pump it out of the well, you got to process it.
Right.
And if you force too much through the microfiltration, then your costs go up, and you've got to run that microfiltration for a longer period of time
Right.
every day.
And harder. You're putting
And
a
harder.
lot more pressure on it.
Yeah.
It's to get that extra percentage out of it, because that 215 is, it's 260 gross, and 215 is, what I'm getting through it. If I push that up to the 235, I'm just putting more pressure through that filter, putting more, causing it to, I forget the word I'm looking for, but just get gummed up with stuff. I forget the exact word I'm looking for, but
I guess-
it gets clogged faster,
Right.
a lot faster.
So in terms of sustainability and efficiency, it
This
seems
is
like this is the best
much
number,
better.
195, 193,500 gallons per
Right.
day.
But to be clear for everybody watching, it's more of a, it's not the water isn't there, it's that it needs to be processed.
It's
There's considerably more water there than,
If
What
we
this
didn't, if
number
we
is.
didn't run it through the microfiltration, you're right, we would have a little more
We'd
capacity.
have, you know,
right.
Yeah.
right, we would.
It's tough to separate that sometimes. You know,
Right.
when we're talking about drilling new wells, it's good to have that.
Yep.
Yep,
And this number will go up then when the new well comes online?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, this will,
And also, I think it's important to note that, you know, if we go forward and we approve this or whatever we move forward with, that come next year with the same well and more experience, these could get tweaked one way or the other.
they can.
So we might adjust them based on our experience and also on actual usage.
Right,
Which is important to note that when people get allocated, they get allocated what the state tells us to allocate per bedroom or per employee. But then after a year of use, you find out, hey, that, 50 bedroom condo doesn't use
Right.
nearly as much as what we're required to allocate.
It's
And
almost
that-
always significantly less.
So what is the per bedroom allocation?
So for the state's numbers for development is 150 gallons per bedroom,
150.
140 if you can prove low flow appliances,
Yeah.
which we have found is quite high compared to actual use.
People use a lot less,
A lot less than that.
which makes sense. I mean,
Yeah,
But if you're doing, like you guys at the paper,
right.
right, if we've got 6,068 to give out, what does that really break down to if we're worried about accessory apartments and
Right.
things like
Right.
that?
right,
You know?
that's right. That will come out, that you,
Right.
well, you have to figure out what the mix is. Some of it could be some
Yeah.
commercial, some could be business at X amount per employee, or, right, so there's only so much there. But if you were to give it all out, come next year, you might say, oh, we only used 3/4 of what we thought. And
Right.
so you end up gaining a little capacity there.
Right. Yep. And like I
Which
said,
is good that they don't force you to hold that number, even though you're demonstrating you're not supplying that amount.
you know, and I actually, my prediction is we will gain 15 to 20,000 gallons of capacity just in usage change next year if things, stay the same. We are currently, the water system is currently the tightest it has been in its entire history. So this past week, I'm on track to be, looks like under 110,000 gallons for the week compared to that 140. So, I mean, it's a little bit less in the summer, but still should be like a 120 average if we manage to stay ahead of any new leaks.
There's
Less in the summer?
Oh, yeah. No schools.
Oh, I'm thinking
Yeah,
people are
CVU,
watering their
it's huge.
gardens, but,
Yeah.
oh, wow.
Wash your hands, kids.
That's it. Yeah, it's not much less, really. With this being the largest school in the state, you would think it'd be more than that, but
Yeah.
like I said, the offset of more household use.
Yeah, and showers and,
Right.
yeah.
They have their own well up there.
They do for
Watering.
their watering of their ball fields. We provide all of their domestic.
So nothing is piped into the building.
None of their
By
well water,
by
no.
them, yeah,
No,
just us.
it's all town water going into the building. Yep, they have just a well for watering the fields.
All right, so if we keep going down through the form here, we've got capacity, how many gallons per day, and then the actual water usage. So the delta is 53,000 gallons. I'm going to recommend two things. One, you put commas in these.
Okay.
that would be helpful.
Okay.
53,000, and then we've allocated already to potential development that has not connected yet, and because we've allocated, which a couple years ago, we weren't keeping track of that, but now we really keep track of that. We've got to put those aside in the anticipation we expect they will hook up at some point, hopefully soon. And then that leaves, and then there's a 3% reserve, which last year we had 0%.
No,
right?
last year we actually upped it and had a
Oh, in the last
7.2% reserve.
Yeah, so in the last weeks we had it down
We
to
had zero
because we had nothing to
we
give.
had negative,
Right.
We had a negative result.
So
I
we
threw
have
in the 3 as just as
reasonable.
possible. As I said in my note to Alex, I think you were copied on. Operationally, if it was the board's will to have no reserve, there's plenty of cushion in both the size of, the allocation numbers the state uses and my knowledge of how tight the system is. I'd be comfortable with no reserve, but it's up to this body here. That would give us 11,000 and change versus 6,000, which would allow there to be some water in category 3.
So at the 3%, the way it is on here now, that gives us 6,000 gallons plus. Alex noted that based on the ordinance, we have a minimum of 5,000 in category 1. That's what our ordinance says, so that's what we've put there. That leaves 1,000 in category 2.
So then we have this other sheet that has the different figures.
This is the sheet.
The other one's
wastewater.
No, I have 2 sheets.
This is the final. If you look at the name, the
bottom
name of the file.
Oh, I have a draft on 7/17
Yeah.
and then one on 7/18.
There you go. 18's
So
when you
use
want.
the 18.
I see. Okay.
And we didn't bother to take the category 2 to residential and enterprise. It just didn't seem, worthwhile. If somebody comes for allocation, we can discuss it then, and because it's not a large amount, it probably doesn't have a big impact.
It's 7 bedrooms.
So on the 17th, it was at 3,000 for category 1, and on the 18th, it was changed to 5,000. Is that because that's required?
So the 17th
Yeah.
was a draft that was purely from me.
Okay.
Because Alex is on vacation.
Okay.
I sent it out to Renee and Phil and Alex, and with the thing of, hey, if Alex pipes in, this is really his area of expertise.
That's
And
exactly what you
and
said.
he did pipe in.
Okay.
And that's
Okay.
how you got the 18th. 'Cause those
Okay.
are Alex's numbers.
Okay, so I'm just asking, did 5,000 go into category 1 because that was,
That's the
what's-
regulation.
That's what our ordinance says.
The ordinance, yeah.
so that's what we require?
Yeah. And if you look, category 1 is, municipal, educational, it's something for the town. So
Civic
it's saying
projects. I see.
we are going to keep, that's what our ordinance says. We always could change ordinances through a process, but at the time when that was written, we decided we should always have some there for town use.
Okay. So then with nothing in category 3, I know you were saying last time, Phil, that if somebody wants to make an in-law apartment or something,
Right.
just a small addition, we don't have water for that.
Right, but, if somebody was to come and we wanted to change from category 2 to category 3, we have that.
Okay.
It's up to the select board.
Okay, and as Eric said, the numbers may change as the usage gets,
Right.
Gets clearer.
Next year, I predict we'll have a little more water.
yeah, okay.
Now so with none in category 3, normally, a mother-in-law apartment, I'm approving authority on, but I'd have to kick it up to you folks in category 3, even if it's just a 1-bedroom in category 3.
And I would suggest I'm sure, move it around a little bit.
Right.
So rather than try to guess,
Yep.
I think this is good, and if somebody, needs it, they wouldn't be told, no, it wouldn't happen at all, we would just go to the select board.
Yep.
It's happened before. I mean, I think
Absolutely.
a year and a half ago it happened for one small development. And we made some changes, and I think we made some changes for Black Rock.
Thanks.
We
I think you
adjusted
did.
the
There's some
categories.
adjustments. Yep. I was just gonna, just let you guys know, you might see those little ones that you don't usually have to deal with.
Yeah, because of that, yeah.
Right.
So again, this is something we've done for the last 4 or 5 years. I think we changed the ordinance about 3 or 4 years ago to get these somewhat standardized.
Yep, July
And this
16.
process standardized,
Yep. Summer 16.
okay?
Yep.
So what is our reserve held for?
The,
A rainy day.
Well, I know about a rainy day, but it's.
You don't need it on a rain day.
You don't need it on a rainy day.
Right.
I know special projects is what that is.
Well, no, special projects is the 5,000.
right, category
I think
one.
I think it's just an additional buffer of prudence, but I don't think,
Is that a state regulation? Or is that a
No.
best practice?
no, because they've got, I mean, once you get up into 80% of your, of their numbers, not, because
Yeah.
this is below their numbers, then you get into a planning cycle anyway, which we already are in
Yeah.
anyway. They say, hey, you gotta start planning for new water.
Yeah.
We're not, even though we're at the top of what we're saying we have, we're not at the state top.
No.
So, we have, like I said, the reserve is something that the board put in there, I think when we first did this for them, and that seemed to be,
Does the ordinance give us any guidance on that? I think Alice
No,
would have,
I don't
I didn't
believe
look
so.
at the ordinance, but
No.
would have piped up
it's not
one way or
mandatory.
the other.
I'm
It's
just
not mandatory.
getting to the point where I don't think having 0 in category 3, when we know we have capacity, because our numbers are down from what the state says we have, and even down from what we say we want to part with. It just doesn't make any sense to me to have 0 in category 3 and have people come into the select board for
In-law apartment.
an in-law apartment or even a couple houses when we know we have water.
Right.
Far more than what's shown even at the top of our capacity as our policy.
Right.
What would be the number you'd want to see in there?
Well, I mean, if we changed it to 2%, or, if we put 1,000 in category 3 and another 1,000 in category 2, then it would still have a small reserve.
Because
Right.
an in-law apartment is 150-ish.
I think just something to
Right.
give Eric and the
Yeah.
and the town staff the flexibility to say, okay, you've got this allocation.
Right.
Makes more sense than people
Right.
coming to us
I mean-
for that when we know we have the water.
And we're-
So maybe I'd look to Eric for a recommendation on category 2 and 3.
Right. So, category 2 right now, by the ordinance, is tiered below category 1 of getting the next 5,000. That's something I would recommend an adjustment to. Where maybe you'd say, when there's enough, they get the next 5,000. When there's less than 5,000, it's split with category 3. That way there's something for all categories. In the near term, since that's not something we could do right this second, I would recommend, at least for this year, just eliminating reserve, go 5,000, 5,000, and 1086.
1086 in
whatever,
category
not,
2
or
or
not
3.
1086. What actually it would be more than that. I'm sorry. Be 5,000, 5,000, and whatever 805 plus.
It'd be 1805.
Yeah, there you go.
So Eric, you say that our system is as tight, is tighter than it's ever been, but you've also said that we have a lot of old pipes,
We do.
and it won't be a surprise if we have more leaks.
Oh, absolutely. We'll have more leaks. The good thing is with the new system, one, I think we're having less. I don't know if it's because of the new water chemistry or, that the pumps come on more gradually, but things
A
are,
lot of things that broke.
yeah, and
a lot
of things are fixed.
Yeah.
But yes, you're always going to have things happen. But on the other side, with the SCADA system that we run that water on, I can see them happen and go into hardcore search efforts right when it happens. I mean, we had a
Because
leak.
you're going to know about it first thing.
Right, we had a leak on the 5th of July, and I can tell you within 10 minutes on when that leak started. It was right there on my chart.
So can I ask one question that it has to do with the last meeting? I'm sorry I wasn't here. But I heard that, and then I also heard there was a large leak. I don't know, what is it? Before the July 5th, you had another one recently, a large leak, and then when you had fixed it, you realized there was probably a smaller leak that had been going on for some time.
So it was the same leak.
Right.
It's just that it was, we call it a pisser. Basically, it was just a small, low volume leak going into a storm drain, and then it just, whatever was holding it together gave way and became a large leak.
Okay, so it was small. It was small enough that it wasn't
It was not noticeable.
enough to be noticeable
Right,
until
and
it
it
broke.
didn't come to surface because it was going into kind of a Swiss cheesed storm drain and just going down
Okay.
the ditch. So at the low level, it wasn't noticeable.
Okay.
And then it made itself quite noticeable when it
Right.
failed the rest of the way.
If the select board decided to remove the reserve, you could put 5,000 in category 1, 5,000 in category 2, and 1891 in category 3.
Okay?
Oh, so you're removing that 3% reserve and adding that into.
The full
And,
capacity.
yeah,
Yep. And, yeah, that's up to the board, but I'm quite comfortable with it from a operations standpoint.
Have we ever had a zero reserve before?
Well, we've only had this system this is the fourth year.
Oh,
So there's not much history there.
If I remember right, we added that reserve when we had the moratorium from the state. Maybe you and I are the only ones that remember that. But I believe that's what we did because we had basically no water at that time. If memory serves me, that's what happened. And it made sense then.
because
We had no water. The wells out here were
max.
And you were running up
max
against,
and they weren't.
yeah, you were running up against the actual state max permit at that point.
okay.
And we're nowhere near that.
Right.
So
What would you recommend? So we're talking about, one.
Near term, I'd be quite comfortable with eliminating the reserve for this year. I would. We've got, especially since we're nowhere near, so that, the 193 is the maximum comfortable through the system, number. Like I said, this week, I'll find out tomorrow, but I'm on average to come out below 110,000 per day. So
What, I don't understand. In
so
terms of
193,
pumping capacity?
193,500 is the maximum we'd like to pump through the
Right.
system.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Last year's average was 140,000 a day. This week's average is less than 110,000 a day.
Okay, so
So-
where is the allocatable capacity of 6,068 gallons per day coming from then? Where do you get that figure?
You gotta go through the numbers.
Right.
You start at 193.
I'm using the last year.
Use-
Use the last year's average.
you've got some allocated, that's what it ends up being left over.
Okay.
50.
Oh, they're allocated, but they're not connected. That's why,
Correct.
that's why you can get away with pumping 110,000 and that's sufficient.
No, it's because people aren't using
Right.
what we're
There's no
thinking
building
they're going to use. That we don't pump it and just dump it. We only pump what they need.
Pump demand.
Yeah.
So
right,
if
right.
they don't need it, then he's saying this week all he's pumped is 110.
Yeah, it's
And
not
it's
just that they
satisfying.
don't need it, but there's 10,000 that's been approved, but it's not connected yet.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
No
yeah.
building there.
That's right.
Right.
Whatever the case
So
is.
there's whatever.
But we
40.
we can't give that away.
Because we already
There's
promised.
almost,
Right,
there's
'cause
almost
you've already
42,000 paper gallons between the business and the enterprise, between their business and residential. Of those 42,000 paper gallons, they'll probably come out to less than 30,000 real gallons.
I see. Okay, right.
So do we have any way of knowing how much until that well goes dry?
Well,
Well, the
it's no longer feasible.
aquifer, well, the aquifer doesn't, you know, if the aquifer started to draw down,
Right.
we'd have, you know, we'd be worried.
Yeah.
But we have level meters in the wells that track that.
Okay.
And and also when we first turned the well on, we had a 5-day pump test where basically the hydrogeologist abused the well
try to empty it.
and just ripped on it and to see what levels it did. So there's the science behind testing what the aquifer can handle.
Okay. So as long as the aquifer
Yep.
stays.
It seems healthy.
Yes,
healthy,
it's a good
there's lot of
it's a
water
good
there
vein.
And we don't.
It's a very good vein.
I guess my only concern is, you know, we've got a possible well coming on with Black Rock that is possible, right? Depending on some tests and things like that. We've got this well that's, you know, I can't say running dry, it's an aquifer, right? But it's low,
Yeah.
right? For the two wells. And
When you say it's
Sam,
low,
it's not
no,
low.
it's
No, it's a
doing
great
fine.
shape. It's a great shape.
And we're using it. It's not low.
Yeah.
It's in great shape.
In fact, it exists because the one it replaced was getting low.
It was a little undersized and it
And
was
polluted.
slightly contaminated with
Yeah.
you know,
MTBE.
so the new well from Black Rock is all about just new development in
New
the future.
development.
It has nothing to do with
Right.
what we've got now.
No,
expansion.
right. If we said we were never going to do any more development,
We'd be fine.
why would we drill another well?
Yep, we'd be fine.
We're not drilling a well because we're concerned about the one we have. We're drilling a well to get additional capacity.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just coming from the standpoint of the Water Wastewater Allocation Commission, where review water is not something you just hand out.
Yeah?
You know, just so, like, for example, I'll walk in and say, hey, I'm a category 2, I need, you know, 800. And we'll just, okay, there you go.
Well,
Have a
they
nice
come
day.
to the select board to get approval, so.
Yeah.
And well, also, you know, Alex isn't here to speak to that, but there's a whole allocation committee that has been working on the new standards on how that will be given out. You know, as far as what qualities of the project, you know, they're looking for. So that's a whole different layer that's coming very soon.
But there isn't much here at our existing well that we have to give out.
Right,
What we're talking about is really a very small amount.
yeah.
But if the new well comes online, we know we've already given out a portion to BlackRock
Yeah.
as part of
Right.
the deal. And then, depending on the capacity,
Yep.
it may be important to have the allocation standards that we then decide, you know, how much more we give and who we give it to.
Yep.
All right, so we have some discussion. We have this annual allocation pool. And I think the discussion is, do we eliminate the reserve, which Eric is comfortable with, which would allow us to put some in Category 3 and some in Category 2, as a minimum, allow Eric to be the approver of very small projects, very small in-law apartments and things, not have it come to the select board, probably give very small development opportunities without having to come to us necessarily and have us adjust these numbers again.
Phil, what if we put the reserve at 1% so that it's still there as a reserve? I'm just worried if we have it at 0%, we'll forget that there was a reserve and that.
I won't forget.
What would that look like?
I mean, we could leave the line in there and just put 0%.
Well, 3 is almost 6, so it'd be almost 2,000 gallons less. So you could
Which would still remove category 3.
or, you know,
You could put a little more in category 2 and some in category 3.
no,
It would eliminate
if
category
you-
3.
Right, so you have to put 5 in category 2 before you can put any in category 3.
Oh, I see, I see.
But I could absolutely leave it in the wording and just put 0% so that it's a placeholder there in the form.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a good idea.
Yep.
It would be interesting at this point to see how much potential, this is just an off statement, but how much potential is left in the category 2 project potential. Because Commerce Street is almost built out and Hannaford already has,
They have
they
allocation.
already have their
their
allocation.
Right.
Industrial 2 and 3, that's a cheese plant, right? So there's only so much
And they're done there.
potential left in those. So we don't need to have that discussion tonight, but it might make sense to have that discussion down the road as to, do we really need $5,000 as part of our
5,000
statute?
gallons per day, yeah, you're right.
Good point.
I think like Vermont Smoke and Cure has talked about
That's right.
increasing their capacity, so, but you're right. I mean, you know, we've got we came up with these numbers probably when we had some capacity or thought we would have it. So on the, go
Sorry.
ahead.
My assumption is it's, I hear what you're saying, but I think the assumption is business first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I don't,
That's- I think that's
I
the
don't,
goal.
Village center growth.
Yeah.
Sure, that's
that's how it
fine, but
should go.
if it's almost built out, does it make
Yeah.
any sense to
Right.
reserve
What's
that
the
much
reality
water?
of
What's the
more
reality?
happening?
Well, I mean, we had
Reserving
Frost
for-
come.
But you had Frost come in,
Yeah, we had
right.
Frost come to us saying they wanted to increase capacity,
Right.
so they may,
Just,
you know,
you know, just something to address, not
Yeah.
necessarily change, but just to
Yeah.
look at and see where we are.
yeah, fair enough.
Or at least
So-
build flexibility into the language. Yeah.
So what are people thinking?
I'm comfortable with it.
With 5, 5, 10, 91.
891.
Zeroing out
18.
reserves for 1 year,
Mhm.
essentially, and running the numbers like we've been talking.
And we expect, you know, all things go as expected, we would have additional capacity next year, a small amount,
I believe so, unless we have a,
disaster.
let's get one of those scary leaks that you can't find. But we've been getting very good at finding, invisible leaks.
So we would need a motion if we were to.
I'll make a motion to set the, what is it, number 3? No, it's, where's the reserve one? Oh, well, I guess it's,
It would be,
no, you want to know what the numbers would be.
we would set the reserve at 0%, category 1 at 5, category 2 at 5, category 3 at
Remainder,
1891.
91? Is that what it was? Yeah,
Mhm.
do the math on that?
I hope so.
Yep.
I'll second Aaron's motion.
I like the idea of keeping that reserve as a line in there, which is part of our ordinance, I guess, or part of Appendix E. So, again, this is using 215 gallons per minute versus the 235, and keeping our use of the microfiltration at a good operating level, not a stressed operating level.
And that's good information to know, Eric.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Any more discussion?
It's going to save a lot of effort on a lot of people's parts.
Yeah.
Potentially.
I'm still not convinced, but I think I may be the only one.
It's okay.
I'm just concerned about My concern is about just handing water out, and we've got an allocation pool coming. Will there be a lot of mass run to the door to try to get allocation? There's not a lot there, but
Yeah.
I'm in the mindset of this is the most precious thing we have in this town. That's my only concern. But I also hear the point of, you know, you live in the town, you want to put an ad on, you know, it's kind of our responsibility to make sure you've got that capability. So I'm torn, I guess is what I'm saying.
Not to
That's
artificially hold it is what you
Right.
might be thinking.
That's
Well,
my,
there was the option that I brought up a few times to have some kind of a moratorium on handing out allocations until we get these new requirements in place.
What requirements?
Um,
Oh, the,
the proposed.
Yes.
But then I get torn with that because I also agree with
saying
if I'm a taxpayer in the town and I want to add, I don't know, a
apartment.
bathroom or an in-law apartment, I should have the ability to do that without saying, sorry, you got to wait until we get through business. So I'm stuck in the middle a little bit. So I just don't like we're forced to 5,000 in category 2, I guess is where I'm at. So.
again,
Any,
you know,
any,
I don't think that, you know, if in the middle of the year we wanted to adjust this for somebody for category 3, I think we can do it.
you can't.
We're the select board.
Right.
We're the ones who make this Appendix E.
And just because it's there doesn't mean you need to necessarily approve it. You know, when someone, I mean,
Right.
you know, someone comes for a single house, you know, and I'm the approval authority for that level. But even then, if it seems, you know, contentious in any way, I won't sign it. I'll just send it to you anyway. So you have you still have the, you know,
We
the
do have
control.
the authority.
You can just say
we
no.
do allocate. So if somebody
Right.
came and said,
You can
I
just say
want
no.
to make a drinking water business and I'm going to bottle the water because it tastes so good, according to Eric. And,
According to the judges at the state level.
all right, according to the judges, you know,
does,
so allocate the water. We might say, no, that's too valuable for that. All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. Is there more discussion? Jeff?
Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm like,
Sounds ominous.
I'm perfectly fine with it because we have to go back in time and look at where
Yeah.
we were a few years ago before the new wells were online, and that's why this was created, because we had such limited capacity.
Right.
okay.
And now we have a really good well, and in my mind, you know, the people of the town have paid to put this system in place for when they need water.
No, I agree.
And, you know, these categories are in place so we can kind of sort that out, but if we have the water, I think we should be looking to sell the water. So I'm fine with Aaron's motion.
Okay. All right, so we'll vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Nay, and so it's 4-1. All right.
Right, and then the wastewater one should be fairly quick.
We'll see about that.
It's, well, the thing is, there's the interdependency.
Is that 5D?
That would be, I think it was 5D, yes.
Yep, there's clear interdependency between water and wastewater allocation in the ordinance, where if you're in the water and sewer district and you cannot get water, or vice versa, water allocation, then you don't get wastewater allocation.
Right, so nobody would get wastewater allocated, even though there's a lot there.
Right.
Nobody would get that unless they had water
Right, so
allocation.
the numbers are much larger, but they don't really mean anything above
Right.
the water numbers.
Yeah.
And we've got them allocated in the categories. Really, it's just an exercise because nobody's going to stress any of those categories, I don't think.
Correct.
So I'll make a motion then to approve the wastewater allocation pool
as shown in.
As shown as
in
Appendix E.
Appendix E, draft date 7/18/2019.
Second.
And I assume we don't have a reserve here because it's dependent on the water?
I
It
don't know.
was never set up for one. The previous years didn't have one either, so I'm not sure. There just wasn't, I'm guessing that the board chose not to put a reserve in because it's always been, the water's always been the,
Right.
The limiting
The
I
limiting
factor.
imagine
factor.
at some point, conceivably, you might.
I could see
Yeah.
that.
And the wastewater flow is what we can treat reasonably, right, with our existing plant?
That's our, yep. Well,
That's our permit.
that's our permit limit.
Yeah.
And, I mean,
250
the,
at the top.
the plant's actually overbuilt, it can treat more than that, but that's what the state allows us. We can't treat, the things that it wasn't designed to
I
treat.
think, and
Yeah.
probably a part of that permit is the Plat
Right,
can only take so much
yep, the hydraulic capacity.
discharge.
Yep. Well, actually, if you look at the history, the 250,000 gallons a day is only because back when they went for the new permit, when they had the upgrade, right as they went for their amount was right after the cheese factory pulled out, and our usage went way down, and the board at the time didn't foresee the need because they were actually putting in for 308,000, and it was going to easily pass
Yeah.
at the state level. And of course, you pay, the fee is based on your size. So they said, hey, we'll never need that much. Let's just put in for 250. So, and it turned out to be a mistake. So,
All right, we have a motion
Yep,
and a second.
we do.
Any more discussion?
So I didn't want to drag this on, I'm sorry. So we know so I get that there's a state allocation that we have. Our treatment plant can treat that for what it's meant to treat. Do we know, I'm just worried about the new state regulations with the water and us overburdening the La Platte, which then gets us in other kinds of trouble with the state. And do we know with this allocation, well, I guess it doesn't because it's phosphorus and the other things that,
Right.
that's a whole nother conversation.
we're staying within our, well, it's our current, which is our previous limits for those, because we're on a compliance schedule where we have 5 years to comply to the new numbers, which is why we're building a new plant, because
Right.
it's just, the lagoon technology just can't do it.
But the most, even though we have these categories for wastewater allocation, the most we would allocate is what coordinates against the
water.
10,000 gallons
Right.
of water. So,
But with the rare exception of you have a neighbor come onto wastewater.
that's, yeah,
There's
that's
his
yeah.
his little cul-de-sac is like the only place there's wastewater and no water.
I think there's one other place.
There might be, but yeah.
All right, so we have the motion, it's seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so that motion passed. And I think that's it, Eric.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, next, item 6 is, this got added to the agenda 2 or 3 days ago after, maybe Front Porch Forum, posting, article in Vermont Digger, WCAX, news thing, something in the Citizen, maybe? Was there something in the Citizen? Tonight there is, okay. So some news about, let's say safety in public parking lots. Based on the murder that occurred off of Gilman Road, I did discuss this and the news articles with Chief Cambridge a little bit, and he said that he was going to look at data that they have. Ask Doug to see if he could dig into the data of any history of problems in these trail parking lots. He wasn't aware of any. And now what I'm saying is what he told me, so I'll do the best I can, but I'm not speaking for him necessarily. He said that the officers regularly, as they drive by, they look and check. And he said, you know, he recalled one time there was a car in there, and he's pulled in to see what was going on, and it was a totally innocent thing, somebody there, but not an issue whatsoever. Right. I can't remember any issues, although maybe 4 years ago or 5 years ago there was something on Texas Hill, some complaints of some kids or something.
There was a meth lab.
No,
That wasn't in the parking lot, yeah.
No, but I thought you meant drug-related. That's
No.
the only thing that I
Yeah.
recall that was
Yeah.
drug-related in
So this
Hinesburg.
would, on the parking lots, I think,
there
but
might
I
have
don't
been one up
remember.
on Hayden Hill.
Yeah, that's what I
West.
think, yeah. So I said, well, maybe we should at least put a little discussion on it. I think Anthony, you know, didn't necessarily say, yes, he thinks we've got a problem or that we need to take serious action. I think he said, you know, whatever the town chooses to do, they would, you know, do what we want them to do. And so that's about it. And I'm guessing we have a few people here that might want to talk about it. So I don't know, should we just open it up? I'm all right with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you just, whoever wants to talk, just,
Make sure you sign in.
yeah, did you sign in on the
Yes, I
sheet?
did.
All right,
Staff, Phil. So,
go ahead.
Lenore Budd, Chair of the Trails Committee. Needless to say, this is a terrible occurrence on Gilman Road. And I think basically we need more information before we start choosing solutions. But the Trails Committee, I mean, I personally think the Trails Committee wants safety for trail users and for neighbors. So one of my first questions was what you just relayed from Anthony, is that what is the history in Hinesburg? Are these trailhead parking areas a mecca for crime or not? I mean, I don't know the answer to that, and I assume that the police crime data is recorded in some way where they know where they've been, and you know, I don't know if it's GIS based or how they do it, but if they can say there's more occurrences at trailheads, because I don't know the answer to that.
I'm guessing the database just records anytime they take any actions or they get called out. So they would know, you know, how many call-outs they had
But they would
and
have
things
by
like that.
street address or some kind of locational data so we can
Maybe.
figure that out.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what we need to know. Is there a problem? So that's a question. And then if it is a problem, how do we make them, the trailhead safer? We certainly don't want to close them. I just hate the idea of losing public space and, you know, we're all going to retreat into our castles and behind the moat and pull up our drawbridges, and so that would really make me sad. And so many people, not just on the Trails Committee, but a lot of other people, put a lot of work into what we hope is a public amenity and an asset to the community, and not a burden. I mean, we don't want to burden neighborhoods with the trails. So we'd like to figure this out, but. It certainly makes it a little challenging right now because we're in the process of talking to other landowners in other parts of town about trailhead parking.
Access.
About new easements and things. And so it's like, this is not a great time to be having these conversations. So yeah, we'd like more information. So if the police can provide us some data on that, I think that's the first step.
We can certainly ask and see what they have, and that's basically what he said
Yeah.
they were going to go do.
Yeah.
I would just like to,
Do you want, you should introduce yourself.
Jane Sheldon, Trails Committee. I actually came across a drug deal at Prague's during daylight hours when I was restocking the map holder. And I was a little concerned about my safety, so I drove in and spoke to Chief Koss, who was in the parking lot, and he called, and of course, he called a cruiser, and they went out, and of course, they were all gone. So one of the complaints was, closing it at night. Well, it's gonna happen during the day too, so, in considering some of the solutions, keep that in mind, that it's not just nighttime activity.
George Dameron, Trails Committee. So I think one consideration to keep in mind as well is that the entrances to the trails, to the trailheads, are one of many public access areas, and I think it would be difficult to single out one or two unless the data is such that it's really overwhelming, the amount of issues that show up at a particular place. And I'm thinking in particular of the cemetery, which is basically across the street, which is even more isolated, quieter. I mean, you can really be there. No one will see you from the street. Or the playing fields, or there was damage there last year by someone, couldn't be prevented. Someone goes out there and it's just vandal that happens. So I think it's a very tricky issue, but I'm totally in support, as Lenore said, of trying to maintain public access, if at all possible. I understand Craig's very grave concern when you feel your family's been threatened. And now I'm just talking about on my own, not Trails Committee at all. I'm thinking of one of my very close friends and colleagues who was killed in Essex by a stray bullet, and it was related to target practice. And I was struck reading one or more of those articles. I think it was one article in particular that talked about neighbors knowing that there was target practice occurring in their neighborhood. And I would just want to perhaps caution all of us to make sure most people, I think most hunters are very careful. In Essex, the individuals are very careless, and it ended up killing a 75-year-old man at his dinner table. So if there is a problem of target practice, if we know that that's happening in that area, perhaps the individual should be approached, and the police perhaps should make sure that they're properly trained and can follow the law, which I know that our laws are very generally liberal. But that struck me when I was looking at those articles, and it really doesn't concern the trailheads per se, but it does concern public safety in the rural areas of our town.
I'll relay a little more information that Chief Cambridge mentioned to me. One, he wanted for me to know that it had been reported that there was a 911 call and that they were an hour to get there or something like that. And, as far as he knew, there was never a 911 call. There was a complaint, or one or two complaints, and one was of gunfire. And, the officers responded, and he was looking into how fast they responded. But he said a complaint about gunfire is happens all the time.
I was going to add, those of us across the street, we've heard gunshots.
Sure.
And we've called, because you never know.
Right.
It could be a domestic dispute, it could be someone just down Charlotte Road practicing at targets, but I think neighbors are going to report it.
Yeah. So, and he was just sort of looking at that too to see, I guess, concerned it was implied that the police didn't respond as fast as expected, and so we'll also get the data on that too, to really clarify.
Brett Golan, just Couple of thoughts, Mike. Regardless of whether the facts that the landowner has stated about the town's interactions are correct or not, and that needs to be investigated, certainly.
As far as property,
Yeah, all this, and the history and this and
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I still have tremendous respect for the fear and concern that he would have if it was my family. And I think we also, whether it's true or not, we have to, as the town, be careful to not seem in any way indifferent, because it's going to have, there'll be a lot of blowback in the years to come with easements and that sort of thing. So we may in fact have to go a little overboard in showing our concern. Not that we should be closing things, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Comments?
I think that's a good point, and I want to go right back to the very first thing Lenore said, and that was we need more information. We need to be very careful, since we do not know what actually happened. We don't know what happened. The state police are covering this, not Hinesburg. This is a state police case. We don't know what happened, and we are doing ourselves a disservice to jump to it was a drug deal. We don't know that. And until we know that, that will play very differently if it was or wasn't or something, whatever it was, I don't know. End result, there's a person dead, that's a very serious thing. It happened very close to someone's house, that's a very serious thing. But we really don't know the facts. And as much as I appreciate this conversation, I really hesitate to react to something that I don't even know what it is yet that we're reacting to. We don't even know what the problem is. We don't even know what we're trying to fix. We don't even know what it is in front of us. So I think that's going to come out. I mean, why would I think otherwise, right? You know, the state police will give some sort of report, however this happens. I'll look to Chief Cambridge to help us sort of decipher that or move that along or whatever needs to happen. And then to your point about property and we built on it or something, you know, it was the first I heard of this. Sure, let's get that figured out. You know, it's clear he wants something done about that. We do something about that. And I think it is true that we do have to take this seriously and that we don't want to be at all callous. We don't want to be dismissive in any way, but we want to be intentional and we want to be straight with our facts. So I appreciate y'all coming because it's really important to start talking about this, because in the absence of any conversation, it just becomes infill and it's a lot of noise and it just gets worse. So I'm really anxious myself, like you, to find out, you know, what really happened so we can properly go about addressing it for all the reasons that you stated and more. You know.
Is the Trails Committee responsible for that parking lot? Is that like under your?
Yes, I would say, Marilyn, yes, it is.
Because Andrea called me before the meeting, she wasn't able to come, and the last post that Craig put on Front Porch Forum, he did talk about the property issues, and Andrea confirmed that what he said was accurate, that he was on the Hinesburg Land Trust at the time, and just, as he said, he just ignored that the surveying, it actually was on his land, so she recommended that you find that surveyor and have it resurveyed and have it not on his property. That's a fairly easy fix, except that she said there are drainage issues. That was why it went on his property.
She knows a lot more about this than I do. That parking lot was built, I was trying to figure out, just looking at aerial imagery, sometime between 2011 and 2014. 2011 it's not there, 2014 it is there. I think, and this is where Andrew would know a whole lot more, that it was a Hinesburg Land Trust project to build that parking lot, because it was all part of the creation of that town forest.
That's right.
So I wasn't involved at the time. I don't know if Craig is correct or not.
Well, she said he is, and my point is that
she said that he is or is not.
He is correct. She confirmed what he said. So that is an action that can be taken, to have that resurveyed and have it so it's not on his property. That was one thing that he was pretty adamant about in his latest post.
I don't, does that fall to us to do?
No,
mean,
I think this would be the town. We
Yeah.
work with you to look at that. So I think the town
Yeah.
has a responsibility to take a look at it and clarify property lines and take whatever action we might need to take.
This is, again, me just speaking for myself. I'm wondering, perhaps this is more a suggestion, because you all know the best way you need to proceed and do everything according to legal procedures. Given, I think, what we've all said, given the fact that I think all of us would react in the same way as Brett was saying if we felt our families were really threatened. I'm wondering, once the information's collected, once all the reports are in, whether it wouldn't be a good idea for one of the select board members, perhaps yourself, to meet with Craig and go over all of the different points. I don't know whether that is the best way or whether legally it has to be in a meeting like this with minutes, but I think it is important, I think, as Brett and Lenore were both mentioning, with regards to not only family welfare, but also the work of the Trails Committee, the discussions that we'll end up having with townspeople about easements and so on. It's important, I think, to know that your concern your concern about your family is recognized and safety is the dominant priority.
Mm-hmm. You know, perhaps, and I'm not making a decision in any way, but perhaps I think our town has, in the past, when something like this has come up, have a public meeting. Mm-hmm. And, you know, get some data, share the data that we know, have an opportunity for everybody to sort of weigh in, have representatives from, you know, all sides, I guess, or all factions and all views, and then, you know, and then I think at that point the select board could, you know, take that information and act
That's a good idea.
in the way that it seems prudent.
I just had one comment. I just wanted to clarify responsibility. I think it was Mary Lee asked us. I don't think we are responsible for the maintenance of the parking lot past signage, the kiosk. I mean, we don't have a budget to.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
We didn't install it, and I think that was a Hinesburg Land Trust project. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would
know the
say,
history of
that
it.
more than likely, I mean, I guess the town is responsible for it. And
I think Rocky
more than
was
likely,
involved in
yeah, more than
installing it.
likely
He
the
was.
town has taken responsibility on a project like that. Somebody's responsible to maintain and in this kind of
Yeah, I
situation,
know
so.
the town is plowing that
Yeah,
lot, and it was, Rocky was involved in the construction of it. But
Mhm.
it was-
all right, anything else?
Thank you.
All right, yeah, thanks for coming, appreciate it.
Phil, do you have any feeling for how soon Anthony's?
I don't
gonna come
know,
back with
maybe,
any
I would think
data?
within a week we should, you know, seems
Yeah.
reasonable.
Okay.
I know he was out on some family issues, so,
Yeah.
Tonight, which is why it's nice.
the last few days, yeah.
Yep.
Including our town administrator takes off on a week like today. I can't believe it.
You'll be hearing from her, Phil.
I know, right now. Believe me, she checked on me and said, "Are you all set for the meeting?"
You're doing pretty well without it.
Oh, I don't know.
No, we could use her.
Yeah.
Put that in the minutes, please.
All right, thank you for coming, yes.
Yes, thank
See
you for
Brad.
coming.
Thanks for coming.
So it seemed, I don't, you know, I think we can have a discussion about it, but, you know, maybe a public meeting, separate, outside the select board. You know, I'm thinking when we had the bike accident there was a public meeting and everybody had a chance to sort of weigh in.
That was a little different because I think Chief Cost called that.
Yeah?
And I would prefer not to make any decision until we have more information.
Yeah, I agree.
It might not be necessary to have a public meeting. I don't know.
Okay.
Agreed.
Well, let's get the information and have
We'll know more soon.
Chief talk. We should talk to the chief and see what he says. Maybe we can get that on the next agenda.
Right, and it might be good to have Andrea come in because she really has all the information about how it was created and the property lines and that stuff, and she had some
I think
ideas.
that's altogether separate
Yeah, that's a
discussion.
whole separate thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Well,
But I
I mean,
wanna-
that can happen offline some other way, but I think the safety is what we're hearing here, and get your culvert off my land is another story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for bringing up the not jumping to conclusions that it was a
Right.
drug-related crime. That's really important, I think, for everybody. So,
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
All right. Select board forum.
I have something. So let me pull up a picture here. Last night, I had the pleasure of attending an event at the fire department. Tom was there.
Great. Yeah.
Our Hinesburg Fire Department received the Vermont Emergency Medical Services First Responder of the Year Award for this year. It's in honor of your dedication and excellence in providing emergency medical services to the citizens of Vermont, the plaque says. Al was presented this for the second time. This was presented to the department back in 2013, I believe it was. Two-time winner. By the head of EMS services for the entire state of Vermont. And as an aside, the same gentleman gave a really great TED Talk up in Stowe, which you can find online, that Al put out on Front Porch Forum a few weeks ago, on how a community rallies around basically the industry of life-saving, and what they do to keep people alive and stay trained and stay cohesive as a highly functioning family and unit. And they got recognized for it last night, and it was really great. And Al accepted that award on behalf of the department, and it was really nice.
Great.
So that.
Maybe there'll be an article in the paper.
It wasn't there, but.
I'll get you the picture.
Yeah.
I took some because I didn't see you there.
And I talked to Eric, and he had said he would get me some, but
Good.
the more the merrier.
Sure.
Yeah.
Bird in the hand.
Great.
and all
Sure,
that.
sure. Yeah. But Tom was there as well. So.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's good.
Yep. And they had hamburgers and hot dogs, so there
Yes.
goes the barbecue too.
Yeah.
The chief cooked.
Yeah. Ooh.
Oh, he likes to play with fire.
All right. Any other items for?
So I wondered what the status is now with the ambulance committee and finding is somebody in charge of looking for a consultant facilitator?
Yeah, you and I.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, it's good to have that clarified because I thought somebody
what we-
else was in charge of
No, that's
doing
what
that.
that's what we talked about last week. But I'll get with you after the meeting. How's that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I just got a
And,
quick.
and
sorry,
certainly, if you're looking for some additional help or support or anything, if any of us can do that, let us know.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, because I think our next meeting's before this, but August 3rd is that pop-up park that
Yes.
Maggie's been spearheading so great.
Yeah,
So
can
the
you do it on
rain
a
date's
Saturday?
the 10th. Yep. So it should be a good thing to see what we can do on
So
that.
Yeah.
the event is
August 3rd.
August 3rd.
And then
it's
if
like
it
a
rains,
s-
August 10th. And that
a
is
Saturday at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something.
Yeah,
close to
it's-
that.
Sounds like
Saturday.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can get you the exact dates.
I think
but yeah.
Alex had a post about it on Front Porch
Yes.
Forum
Yeah, I
today.
think you're going to see it on Front Porch Forum and
Yeah,
stuff.
I
just
think
wanna
Alex had a post about
remind
it as well.
everybody.
All right. Couple of items. So the wastewater committee met a couple weeks ago. We're narrowing down on the design. I think really the next step is to have Wayne come in and explain. I think we're going to explain the process of how we got to the design we got, and he is now looking at some funding options, so we have an idea on how much funding we could, how much support we could get. we're reaching out to other possibilities, and we'll have a rough timeline, potential timeline too, because there would be a bond vote associated with this. So, so that I think could be in our next meeting or the meeting after.
That's a lot of work.
There's
That's a lot of
there's a survey that has to happen with the USDA because that's a potential funding source, and they have to look at income levels. So there's some kind of survey process that's already started to get some of that data to understand whether that might be a possible funding source. And there's sort of there's a couple of them out there, but if you get one, you can't get the other. So there's sort of, you got to juggle a little bit. So we'll get more information on that.
He's good at juggling.
Yeah, I feel confident we were in good hands.
I agree.
With them. And it was good to be on the committee. I think we went to 4 different wastewater treatment plants, looked at, the design alternatives, discussed them.
Have a good time.
Yeah. Some jokes in there. Fill them in yourself.
Fill them in.
And,
Don't let 'em pass.
one of the challenges, not to take away from the excitement of that meeting, but one of the challenges is you now have to build a structure there where now there's just lagoons in a little building. And the soils there are very poor. So some of the cost is associated with what's
that
called
correctly, yeah.
the design chosen is some wick drains, which are quite costly, that help to settle the soils and allow you to build some structure
That
on
makes sense
there.
because what the soil is really good at doing what it's doing currently.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that
So
that's the case.
I think that's it for Select Board Forum. I did drop some minutes in the packet. If we've had a chance to look at them or we feel comfortable, we could go ahead and consider them for approval.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the July 11th, 2019 Select Board meeting minutes pending any amendments, additions, changes we make.
I second it.
All right. They weren't without errors. In the ambulance committee, it's on page 2 near the bottom. The second sentence is a longer one, but near the end, what will be in place by, I think the "in" can just come out, be in place by July 2020.
Oh, well, while you're at it, with considerations being, that should be a colon instead of a semicolon. I'm sure that's what you meant it to be.
Yes.
I think Tom was going to point that one out.
I was all over that one.
It's the grammar. What's the best you guys can come up with?
That's it. They actually look pretty good, I thought.
You put Easter eggs in this for us, right? To find? Is that how that goes? Yeah, okay, good. That's what I always
That way I
assumed.
know if you read them.
That's what I always assumed.
Is everybody ready?
I am.
So the motion to approve with those very important amendments. All those in favor say aye.
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 Abstain.
And
I wasn't here.
yep, and one abstention. Next item is consider approving the warrants.
I'll make a motion to approve the warrants to include payroll as presented by the clerk in these 2 binders.
Okay,
Second.
all right. Had a look. They seem fairly simple
Did you look up?
this week, yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye, so we approve the warrants. There's no reason to go into executive session that I know of for this meeting. With that, I guess,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.